Bike path, because we have
And it says down here, up to $10,000.
Planning board is
federal
May
funds
3rd.
from the New Jersey State
Yeah.
Police Office. So the federal government gives the state police.
No, I should be.
These are great questions. I would bring them to both. You did. Did it?
Good evening. I'd like to call the regular Borough Council meeting of April 24th, 2023 to order. This meeting has been properly advertised in the Home News Tribune of January 6, 2023, according to Public Law 1975, Chapter 231. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana.
Aye.
Councilman Collins.
Aye.
Councilman O'Donnell.
Aye.
For the record, Councilman Preddy will
Here,
be
sorry.
out this evening. And Councilman Potter.
Here.
And Councilman Revelinsky.
Aye. Or here.
Please join me for a moment of silence, followed by a salute to the flag. All right, now we have approval of minutes from the April 10th, 2023 meeting. May I have a motion and a second?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that the minutes be approved as typed.
Second?
I have a motion by Councilman Potter, second by Councilwoman O'Donnell. Any comments or corrections?
I sent a minor correction. It was noted.
And it was already noted,
Okay,
and
thank
the
you.
correction was made.
Anyone else?
I'll be abstaining just because I wasn't present.
Okay. All right, so then, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed and abstain?
Abstain.
Okay. Next on the agenda is comments from the audience. If any member of the public wishes to speak on any of the resolutions, please identify yourself to the clerk and say your name and address for the record. These comments are limited to resolutions listed on the agenda. Seeing none, I will close audience comments and move on to bills and claims. Will the clerk please read by title only the bill resolution 128, 2023?
Resolution 128, 2023 is authorizing the payment of bills, claims, and statements against the Borough of Milltown in the total amount of $1,010,210.63.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that the bill list be approved as typed.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Potter, second by Council President Zambrana. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilman Collins?
Aye.
Councilwoman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
And Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll have the introduction of resolutions. When voting on resolutions, all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and, having been reviewed by the Borough Council, will be enacted by one motion. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member, and if so removed, will be treated as a separate matter. Any items requiring expenditure are supported by a certification of availability of funds. Are there any questions, or does anyone want to pull any resolution from the consent agenda? There being no request to pull any resolutions, will the clerk please read the consent resolution?
Whereas pursuant to the rules of council, the council may establish a consent agenda for any regular or special meeting, and whereas the Borough Clerk has posted a consent agenda for this meeting. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Borough Council of the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, that the consent agenda previously prepared by the Borough Clerk be approved without the necessity of having the individual resolutions read by the Borough Clerk.
We've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that the resolution be adopted. Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilman Collins. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilman Collins?
Aye.
Councilwoman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
And Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries. To approve resolutions 129 through 137.
Thank you. All right, now we have the budget public hearing and adoption. This is the public hearing for Budget 2023. And since introduction, full copies of the budget are presently posted on the Borough website, on the bulletin board at Borough Hall, and are available at no cost in the office of the municipal clerk between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. May I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing for the budget 2023?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilwoman O'Donnell, second by Councilman Revelinsky. The public hearing on 2023 budget is now open to any member of the public who wishes to speak on budget 2023. Seeing none, I will ask for a motion and a second to close the public hearing for the budget 2023.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilwoman O'Donnell, second by, was that you, Dave?
Yes.
Councilman Potter. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The public hearing for Budget 2023 is now closed. May I have a motion and a second to adopt the 2023 bid?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Council President Zambrana, second by Councilman Potter. Any questions or comments from the council?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have a couple of questions. On page 30, it says there's a surplus of, I believe it's $600,000 in a water fund from last year. It
On
says,
sheet 30,
31, I'm sorry.
that was last year's surplus, that's not this year's.
We're only anticipating 200,000, but it was
That's all,
600 last year.
yeah, that's the surplus for this year.
I got a question for you. What happens to the surplus?
It gets used,
Gets used.
and it's not regenerated.
I see.
How's that surplus getting used this year?
well, it offsets the budget. So that'll be for, further discussion later on in the year of what we're anticipating as surplus that will be remaining at the end of this year to use in next year's budget, and how, what we'll need to do for that.
But we're planning to use 400,000 of surplus, so,
No, we're using $200,000 this year. That's what is supporting this year's budget for the water sewer utility.
but then 400,000 left over.
No. Last year, we had 600,000. This year, our total surplus was maybe 240,000 that was remaining at the end of the year. So we can only use what, so we didn't use the entire amount of surplus. We maybe have 40,000 left. We'll see what's regenerated at the end of this year.
And we allocate surplus for the purpose of unexpected expenses such as large water main breaks and things like that?
No, the surplus, so the appropriations have to, when you create your budgets, the appropriations and the revenues have to balance, right? So the surplus, whether it's used in the electric utility, water sewer, or your general utility, is used to offset that. That's a revenue that we're gonna anticipate. So in order to balance the budget for this year's, allocations, 200,000 of the surplus was used.
Understood, thank you.
I'm sorry, I had another question on sheet 31. On the electric, it says there's only $125,000 surplus anticipated?
No, that's electric?
Yes.
Yeah, so that we're only using 125,000 of that surplus for the electric to balance that budget.
Let me see.
Anyone else have any comments or questions?
My only comment is a thank you to everyone who worked on the budget. Having reviewed it, I was very pleased with what was included and the rate at which, we're limiting our tax base.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more, will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana.
Aye.
Councilman Collins.
Aye.
Councilwoman O'Donnell.
Aye.
Councilman Potter.
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
That was a yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Pass the budget. I'm sorry, Mitch.
And now we have a presentation of the capital plan from our business administrator, CFO, Jeanette Larison. She is warming up the projector.
What are you trying to figure out? This? This? You got it. Name to please.
Just out of curiosity, how come we're having the capital presentation after we introduce the budget?
One second, let me get this and then I'll be happy with it.
Briefly take it out of full, okay, if it doesn't work, you can briefly take it out of full screen mode and
Oh,
put it back
really?
in, yeah.
No, I'm gonna go over here. I was gonna answer Rich's question. So, the budget contains a capital plan. We're required, when we create our budget, to have a 3-year capital plan. You are in no way bound by what's in that plan. So when we had our budget discussions, we had this year's requests from the various departments. Some of the council liaisons submitted requests, whether it was for the budget or things for their departments that they are liaisons for. And we put together a 2023 capital program. So they're two separate things. So you have your plan, which you're not bound by. Then we have the recommendations for the capital program for 2023, which, if approved, then we'll do a bond ordinance to move forward with those improvements.
Right, but my question was, how come this is coming after the introduction of the budget? Like, to me, it seems that this would have been beneficial in evaluating the budget had it been presented prior to.
This has no bearing
Well,
on the budget
it's a wish
document.
list, though, right? For 2023 and.
Correct, but it's a capital. It's not, it has nothing to do with the budget, other than the fact that you need, a down payment for any money that you're going to plan on borrowing.
Which is in the budget,
Yeah.
so it
The
does
cap-
have to do with the budget.
So if you look at the budget and you look year over year, we always put the same amount, about the same, I've increased it a little bit over the past several years, an amount for a down payment, which is very small compared to your plan. Because you only need a less than 5% down payment for the amount that you're actually going to borrow. So it's not, you're not going to do your capital program before you do the.
So if I may, I'm a little bit confused because the budget was introduced 2 meetings ago. So we're sitting here, we've approved the budget, we're going to go through the capital program, but now we have this question that comes up, so.
The question is simply, why don't we do this presentation beforehand so that we can evaluate the considerations of the capital program
Again,
in conjunction with the budget?
One has nothing to do with the other.
But it does.
But it doesn't.
The down
And
payments
if
are
you let-
included
if you
for the
let our
program
BA
within the budget.
If you let our BA and our CFO go through the presentation, then you see.
I see we're on deaf ears, okay.
Okay, so the 2023 capital program, as I mentioned, after the various meetings with the Finance Committee, taking the requests from the various departments, we created our wish list, and then we went through by priority and put together a program that we feel is, something that we can manage for 2023. So I, want to thank the members of the Finance Committee, which is Council President Phil Zambrana, Councilman James Peretti, and David Potter, who, tirelessly worked on all of these things and vetted them out to be able to put this together. So what's the purpose of our capital improvement planning, right? So basically, this is going to provide the borough with the ability to make planned and consistent decisions for improvements throughout the municipality. And it is not only the needs for the current year, but future years as well. So as we make up our list of wants and we say what we can afford and can't afford, or what is, just to put it in perspective, some vehicles. Well, the DPW and all the departments are having difficulty getting vehicles. So it wouldn't make sense to clog up this year's capital program with vehicles that we can't get anyway. So let's put something else in there to take that place. So that's the purpose of all this, and to actually have a plan that, which I think at this point, I'm happy to say that we have a framework moving forward into additional years that will benefit the municipality. And this isn't always only going to be in monies that we borrow or spend, but it includes items that we receive grants for. So it's just a general overview of the improvements that we do and the various types of funding that are going to support them. So, of course, the number one question that everybody asks is the financial impact, right? Everybody wants to know, well, how much is it going to cost me? So what we try to do is put a plan together that over the course of years doesn't really impact the budget at all. Because as debt falls off, we add new debt on, and it basically flatlines the debt service payments we're making, so that there is no financial impact to the taxpayers, yet they're getting all the benefits of the improvements. So here's an overview of debt service for the operating fund or your general fund. So you can see this is a 3-year, look back. So 2021 was about $1,316,000. 2022, $1,318,000. This year is a little bit higher at $1,352,000. Totally sustainable, and as you know, as we went over the budget, does not impact the taxes at all for that, 30 or 40,000 that got put on there.
Oh, Jeanette, what's the green trust on the last one? It says green trust.
Yeah, that is just debt service. That's a loan that we have through the New Jersey Green Trust Fund. And so let me back up too. Thank you, John. So so there's 3 different mechanisms for borrowing. So we have bonds, which is our permanent borrowing. So that's when you borrow money and think of your mortgage or a car payment or something like that, where you borrow the money, the payments are extended over a specific amount of time. And that goes for the Green Trust too. That's a bond too, but it's a different area of where we get that money from. The bond anticipation note is a temporary financing. This rolls over year after year. So what that enables us to do is we can play around with the amount of money that we want to allocate to paying those down. After 3 years, you are required to make a specific percentage of a payment. The way that I structure it is that we always aggressively try to make payments on that, so that I'm always in control of how much money I want to allocate towards it. There's a plus side and a downside to the bond anticipation notes. So normally you use bond anticipation notes when you first begin your projects, and you wait until normally you would wait until all the projects are complete and then make a decision whether you're going to permanently finance them. For the past several years, the rates for the bond anticipation notes were less than 0.5%. So they were, and we have about $1.8 million in bond anticipation notes. So our interest it was basically free money. Last year, well, the rates went up. So it went from about 0.5% to 3%, which was still less than your bonds. If you average it out over the 3 years, you still made out better, and you still have full control. With a bond, you can't pay it off early if you want to. You have to wait till a certain amount of years till they become callable. With a bond anticipation note, if you have extra money and you want to pay some of it off, you always have the ability to do that. So those are our different mechanisms for financing the projects. The 2023 capital list. So this is an overview of what the departments will see. So the roads, we're looking at doing about $950,000 in improvements. Of that amount, $556,000 will come from grants. The DPW, we're allocating $65,000, police $126,000. The fire department, we're allocating $200,000, and we'll talk about, I'll go over what that money will be used for. We have IT, borough buildings, parks and recreation. So we're looking at $364,000 that will be allocated towards projects for that, but $250,000 is coming from grants. And then the pool, we have $161,000, and then we have our professional fees that we always have to tack on, because some of these projects require design fees and things of that nature where we have to pay our professionals, so we have to add to the total cost of that. So we're looking at a total program, and that doesn't include utility improvements, that's just for the general improvements, of about $2 million. Of that $2 million, we have $800,000 in grants. So, and then we're looking at a financing structure that when the building across the street, or buildings, I should say, across the street the projects were underway. And as I mentioned before, normally you do a bond anticipation note until the project is complete. And then once the project is complete, you send it over for permanent financing. But for whatever reason, the buildings across the street, a bond was issued before the project was even constructed. So as a result, we have excess funds of over $800,000. And so we can do two things with those extra funds, because the money's already borrowed. We've been paying interest on the money since it was borrowed, I guess in 2017 or 18. I'd have to go back and check the records. So normally what you could do with the excess funds is either you can use those funds to pay down the debt, or you can reallocate them. So considering the state of the market and the interest rates that we're looking at, it doesn't make sense to earmark that money to pay down the debt, to borrow additional monies for new projects at a higher interest rate. So the best thing to do with the money is use the cash to offset this year's program, which will leave a balance of about $380,000 that we would have to borrow to finance the $2 million program. So it's a pretty good deal. The reason it's only 380 is because we would need that down payment for the program, and that's I'm allocating 20,000, but it's probably not going to be that much. And then we have our electric utility and water sewer utilities, where we're looking at improvements of $400,000 and $515,000. So that's a general overview, and then we can get into. So we all know that these projects are planned for the areas that I mentioned. If the more investment we put in the town, the larger the improvement of the quality of life. It improves the value of everybody's homes, and makes the community happier overall. And again, the cost of these projects are structured so that it doesn't have any impact on your annual taxes. So let's talk about the milling and paving program. So we've reinstituted, I should say, the milling and paving program for the borough so that we can do a handful of streets, partnering with the county when they'll let us, and that enables us to do additional streets. If they can't fit us into their schedule, then we would go out to bid, maybe do a few less streets. But the bottom line is that we're allocating monies to be able to improve these streets. So this year's wish list of, as long as money that we've allocated holds, we have Howard Street, West Lincoln Avenue, Garver Avenue, a partial piece of Washington Avenue. In addition, we'll have the handicap ramps that are required for accessibility to be upgraded. And then we're also going to institute a borough sidewalk program. So any of the borough-owned sidewalks that we need to start allocating money to start doing the repairs on those. And then the other piece would be the West Foch, which I'm calling a Phase 1 area. This is funded through a DOT grant. So when we talked about the roads and the $556,000, that would be this piece of West Foch. Water lining and water main lining and replacement. So we do have various sites throughout the borough that continue to be funded by a grant. So last year we had $2 million. We just had a presentation from CME last meeting that gave an overall view of what that is going to entail. So we will move forward with that this year. Parks and Recreation. So last year we put the new roofs on the pavilions. When the roofs were being done, the contractor at that time said, you really need to replace these support poles because the whole thing is, it's an accident waiting to happen. So we're going to, we want to allocate money to replace those. And maybe in a future year capital program, we'll talk about other improvements we can do this. So if we do a little bit incrementally, and we are able to spread it around, you know, it's not such a daunting task. The next thing would be the bikeway path for Colthau Avenue to Albert Avenue. So this is funded mostly through grants. I think the total anticipated cost is about $310,000. We got $250,000 through grant funding. And this project is to improve the bike path that already exists, and we're looking to move forward with that. Michelin Park, so for those of you who frequent that area, you know that the walking path over there is dated and a hazard. So we're looking to resurface that, just generally, you know, repaving it, smoothing it out, and making it a friendlier environment. Playground equipment. So this has been a hot button topic for the past year or so. The suspension bridge and the steps at Borough Park have failed. They've been taped off for probably over a year at this point for safety reasons. So this program will allow us to purchase that piece of equipment, because believe it or not, the playground equipment is extremely expensive. So to just get one little piece, you're looking at, you know, $10,000 to $20,000. So we're looking to buy that piece and repair it and open it back up to kids in town. The next piece is pool improvements. So last year's program, we set aside $125,000 towards the pool resurfacing. And so we're looking for the other half of $125,000 for this year. In addition, the roof on the bathroom building is falling apart. We need to replace that. The repair, we want to repair and replace some of the fencing, because for anyone that's been over there, we've taken down that big tree that, although beautiful, was a tripping hazard and caused some problems over at the pool. So as we speak, that area is being milled and paved where the roots were sticking up. And then we're looking to repair the fence over there to give it an overall aesthetically pleasing look and really clean it up. Some building improvements. So again, last year we did a partial for the library roof, and now we're going to add the other half so that we can get that roof replaced, and that will be a great improvement over there. And then for Borough Hall, we have some HVAC upgrades that we're looking to complete, and then IT improvements. We're always moving forward with IT. It's an ever-changing thing that for security reasons, and you're always in need of software and hardware upgrades. Public Works. So Public Works is looking to do improvements at the Annex building behind the Senior Center. And they're looking to put some lighting and heating in there. And we're looking, so last year we did have some money for a vacuum, for the Mad Vac, they call it. And it turned out that we couldn't actually purchase that. So we used some of the money to purchase another piece of equipment that they could use and get their hands on. So now we're looking to put the rest of that money back in so that they can order the Mad Vac that picks up litter and leaves from the parks. And then there's various garbage cans throughout the park system, and I was very surprised to learn how expensive they are to replace. So these aren't garbage cans that you move around. These are ones that are permanent in nature, and the lid itself is $2,000. So it's about a $10,000 garbage can, and I forget how many Ralph said that we did have, which is a lot. So we're not looking to replace all of them, just a few this year, maybe a few next year, but they are starting to rot and show wear. The police department, so there are a few things that we're looking for there. So we have, they're looking for an updated street message board. This message board would be more in line with, say, our borough sign. Not quite as comprehensive, but definitely more sophisticated than the current sign that you might see at the end of Washington Avenue there. So something that has a few more lines, they can put more information on. They asked for 2, we're looking to do 1 for this year and maybe get them another one next year. Camera security, which has become a big thing, not only, everywhere, but certainly the county has been pushing for this, and we'd like to see cameras at the various parks, perhaps the Schwendeman cabin, so that we can keep an eye on what is going on over there. If vandalism occurs, at least now we can see it, who's responsible and take care of it for that. So although we did do we did get several quotes to do, we had everything on our wish list, the number is quite large, so we, are recommending that we do half this year, half next year. There are some school crossing signs that are not working properly, so we're looking to repair those. And then the police department needs to do a 911 system upgrade in dispatch. This is statewide, so it's a matter of, it is a requirement, and again, another very expensive endeavor, but required for the safety of the community. The fire department, and I thought this was a lovely picture, and I got this from their Facebook site, so it's nice to show it all in action. So we're looking to put money aside for the future purchase of a fire truck. We don't know when that purchase is going to take place, but a cost of a new engine could be anywhere from $650,000 to $900,000. So it was decided that perhaps we start putting that money away for a rainy day, and if we allocate it, a fraction of that year over year, when it comes time to actually have to replace one, that the funding will be in place, and you're not eating up your entire capital budget with a single purchase. This is an overview of the electric utility fund debt service, and basically we're back in the different types of funding. So you have your bonds, then you have your New Jersey Infrastructure Trust. So Councilman Collins, that would be, you're asking about the Garden State Trust. This is another type of funding for that, and then bond anticipation notes. So again, the debt service, over time, it increased about 50,000 or, about 100,000 this year, and that's because of the bond anticipation notes. Prior to that, you can see on the graph that in 22 and 2021 that there were no outstanding notes.
Is there a big project planned for that we would have the bond anticipation notes, or what do we have coming up that we're anticipating?
No, the bond
for?
anticipation note is from current expenditures. So last year, we had bond anticipation notes for a utility vehicle, and then there was some outstanding authorized debt that had never been issued. So we borrowed it, because if you don't borrow it and you spent it, it becomes a deferred charge and it becomes a whole nother thing. So basically, we borrow it and then just pay it back. So this year's project is the relocation of service wires for Cortlandt Street and Highland Drive. So that would be the area where the electrical lines are behind the homes. It's a real problem for the utility department to get back there if there's a problem. So we're going to look to get that taken care of. And then the water sewer fund, the debt service overview, again, the different funding sources. And the debt service, again, is up about $50,000 over prior years. And that's, a modest increase. So we're still trying to find the sweet spot of where we're going to maintain it, where it doesn't have any real impact on funding. The improvements for 2023 that are proposed are, so we purchased a new loader last year, and we're looking to get attachments for that loader for basically water main breaks. So a hydro hammer, a clamshell, and a cutting saw to get through the concrete roads. We're also looking to purchase a sewer camera, so when we have backups and everything, so we currently borrow and, from our neighbors, so we'd like to have our own. And then as part of the West Foch area improvements, this would be the water utility side of that. So the DOT grant will pay for the roadway, whereas we would pay for the utility side of those improvements. And then, what I hope to propose in the future, working with the Finance Committee, is that we will continue to have annual capital plans. The past several years since I've been here, we didn't really do any capital for, we had COVID, we had reasons why we didn't get to that, but at this point, I think that we're, as I mentioned, put the framework up to continue on this trend, and as we replace the things that were neglected and not replaced for so long, the number for the capital improvement program will get smaller and smaller because we'll just be maintaining instead of, and I think we've really done a good job of catching up very quickly in a short amount of time. And again, to flatline those debt service numbers so that we have zero impact to the residents. And that is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions
Thank you.
anybody may have.
Nice to see. Anyone have any questions?
Janet, I just had a question on the firehouse. How much was that interest rate on the firehouse and the Public Works building?
If I had to say off the top of my head, it's probably about 4%, but I'd have to go back and look at the documents to be sure.
So the one question I want to make sure everyone understands, so it is a plan, it's great to have a plan. We're not bound by this plan, but you have to have a plan. And so just putting it down on paper, presenting it, getting everybody's take on it, everybody's advice, and doing this for the second year in a row is the way you want to go. To have the plan, to see what you could do for the plan. As Jeanette mentioned, we didn't buy some vehicles because they weren't available. It didn't make sense to take out debt for something that you weren't going to have anyway. You wanted to buy a piece of equipment for the DPW. Well, you couldn't get it anyway, so we pivoted and bought something else that we could get our hands on. So it's a very fluid thing, and thank you for the presentation because it makes a lot of sense, and hopefully we'll continue this moving on.
Yes. The other piece that I'd like to add is that, this list was provided in the budget narrative that was supplied to council a week or two ago. And what I'd like to do is, unless there was objections to the proposals that were made, the recommendations made by the Finance Committee, is to have an ordinance drafted to be able to move forward with this program for 2023 at the next meeting. So I'd be looking for a blessing to do that, and this way we can have an ordinance introduced, and then 2 weeks later, have it adopted and be able to start the program without delay.
Thank you, Jeanette. I support that. This is a great plan. I had a chance to ask some questions in advance, and then my remaining questions were answered by your presentation, so thank you very much.
Sure, you're welcome. Okay, anybody else?
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
All right, we will move on then to council reports. We'll start with the Department of Public Safety, Councilwoman Margaret O'Donnell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll begin with the rescue squad report submitted by Will Kaplan. The Milltown Rescue Squad responded to 85 calls in the month of March, with 46 being in town and the remaining being on the turnpike and in the form of mutual aid to other communities. The annual open house will be on May 21st at 12 noon. Mark your calendars. This is a family-friendly event that's fun for all ages. We will have information on becoming a member where your donations go, and demonstrations of the life-saving equipment used every day. If anyone has any billing questions, they should call Cornerstone, the billing company, with any questions or concerns. Their number is 877-214-6018. You can also access their website via the Rescue Squad's website, which is milltownrescuesquad.org. Please do not call Milltown Police Department with billing or recruitment questions. The Rescue Squad Fund Drive information will be mailed out, and residents should expect to see the flyer this week. On May 1st, the Rescue Squad will resume for the first time in several years, the door-to-door campaign. It was actually a 3-year hiatus. Residents may choose to mail in a donation in the envelope provided in the mailer, or contribute online via the website, or donate when they come to the door in May. And I know they're looking forward to seeing residents in person again. Anyone who's interested in learning about joining the Rescue Squad or becoming an EMT should email recruitment@milltownrescuesquad.org to learn more, and they're always happy to answer any questions. Moving on to a report from the fire department. I have an extremely excited chief reaching out today to say that the monument will be set tomorrow, and that is our memorial that is moving from Main Street to the current firehouse location. This past weekend, the fire department had a successful live burn training at the County Fire Academy, and they were backed up by Brookview Fire Department District 3 and Independent Fire Company District 2, both out of East Brunswick, while they were out of town at that event. And we appreciate that backup. From the police chief, he first asked me to reiterate information from a Nixle message that went out regarding milling and paving. So PSG&G will begin repaving roads tomorrow. For anyone who's watching this as a recording, we're referring to Tuesday, April 25th, and that will be throughout town. No parking signs will be posted in advance when and if your street will be paved. Outside police agencies will be assisting with traffic control as needed. So thank you for your patience and cooperation. And part of our, I wanted to mention this first. I received a thank you from the resident of Herbert Avenue who approached us with a traffic safety concern, and that concern was addressed with our Slow Down in Our Town campaign, and I once again forgot the darn sticker to show you. I promise I will bring it to a future meeting, but he was very pleased with the results. That included the lawn signage and stickers for people's recycling bins. Those recycling bins reinforce that messaging every other week when they're put out at the curb and encourage people to slow down in that area. Part of our consent resolution this evening included authorization to apply for a $10,000 annual grant for our Office of Emergency Management as well. So I think I've got everything covered with that, so thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Department of Utilities, Councilman Dave Potter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no utilities reports for this evening. Planning Board, we had a marathon of a meeting this month, which will continue on Wednesday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. here at Borough Hall. And finally, 4th of July, tickets are still available for this upcoming Celebrity Bartender fundraiser event that will be this Saturday, April 29th at the American Legion. There are still tickets available at the following locations: Mike's Country Market, Maria's, Milltown Convenience, Bagel Express, Rescue by Lacey, and Kelly and Company Hair Design. Or you could purchase using the QR code on the flyer, or see any committee member. And Madam Mayor, I'd like to welcome you and my fellow council members to join me behind the bar as we continue to serve our residents.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we have the Department of Public Works and Recycling, Councilman Rich Revlin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Councilwoman O'Donnell stole a little bit of what I was going to talk about, but I'll restate it. Paving is anticipated to begin very shortly, if not tomorrow, for some of the work that PSE&G has undertaken. So expect those notices on your doors, and let us know if you don't get them, because we'll follow through. Earth Day cleanup was a success. We had that this past weekend on Saturday morning. The members of the Department of Public Works participated and assisted the other organizations in the cleanup efforts. We actually received our new backhoe today for the Department of Public Works. The annual recycling tonnage report was submitted today by Ralph Jasnowski. The soccer fields have been prepped for opening day of the soccer recreation. And please remember that non-metal bulk pickup is on the third Wednesday of the month. This is mattresses and furniture. The first Wednesday of the month is metal. So now that we're going to be moving into May, please just remember that, because it does create a little bit extra stress for our guys, and we're trying to clean up some areas around town, and we don't want to clutter them with a lot of the bulk that's out on the wrong days. Lastly, I'd like to note that the preparations for this summer for the pool have begun. Next, I have a report for the library. So the library participated in Earth Day and gave out Morning Glory seed packets, as well as having kids' crafts. Some upcoming library programs to be aware of are Tuesday, April 25th, adult yoga at 9:15 a.m., and then at 6:30 p.m. is book club. Wednesday, April 26th is drop-in play for kids at 10:30 a.m. On Thursday, April 27th and May 4th, story time. So baby story time is at 10:30 a.m., followed by all ages at 11:30 a.m. On Saturday, April 29th, it's Arbor Day at 11 a.m. Monday, May 8th, will be a criminal justice program at the Senior Citizen Center at 11 a.m. Monday, May 8th, will be American Sewing Guild at 5 p.m. And if you have any questions or inquiries, please call the library at 732-247-2270. And that concludes my reports for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the Department of Environmental, Health, and Social Services, Councilman John Collin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a short report. Earth Day was a huge success. We had twice as many people this year as we did last year. And I want to thank all the volunteers, especially the Environmental Commission and all their members that participated and worked the tables. I learned that we had a Milltown Garden Club, which I never knew. And we're looking forward to an even better celebration next year. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, I second that. They did a really nice job. Everyone from the Environmental Commission, we had a lot of really good turnout. We had scouts and lots of people around to help out and learn a lot of things too. So thanks to all of them. Next, we'll move on to the Department of Recreation. Does anyone have that report?
I do not.
Okay, we'll get next. Okay. And then we have Department of Finance, Administration, and Planning, Council President Phil Zambrano.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do not have a senior center report tonight. Ford Avenue meeting on the 18th was canceled. The next Ford Avenue meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 16th. Don't really have much more to add other than to say thank you to Jeanette Larison, to my fellow Finance Committee members, James Peretti, Councilman Dave Potter, for their help in crafting the budget and agreeing to spend some money in the best possible way. And to the rest of the council, thank you so much for approving the budget, which again, for the fourth year in a row, it's a very modest tax increase and keeping everything moving forward in the way that we want it. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Administrator, Jeanette, anything further?
I actually do. I'm going to make up for all the times that I don't give reports. So I have a number of things to. First of all, I want to publicly thank Bunny Jascott in advance for her efforts. So I've been working with her. She has spent hours out front weeding the front of the building, and we've come up with a plan for plantings and to beautify that. So
Great.
Her efforts are truly appreciated there. Secondly, a home improvement program is available to eligible residents. There is an income qualification. This was posted on the website. I'm just bringing it up as another reminder. There are some pamphlets up front. It can be viewed on the website, and it can, or you can contact Borough Hall and we can send you a copy of the flyer where it tells you where you can contact the entity to see if you're eligible. And it's basically for a 10-year forgivable loan that requires no monthly payments to do improvements on your home. But again, there is income requirements, so please, if you know anybody, have them. We've had very little participation, so that's where we're really trying to push it to get people to participate if they qualify. Then I just wanted to piggyback on both Councilwoman O'Donnell and Councilman Revelinsky's discussion about the paving for PSE&G. As you can tell, we're all very excited that this is actually happening. And I just wanted to further say that it's going to be about 24 roads that are impacted, so it's going to be a really great thing for the town. And then to follow up on the garbage pickup, please review your calendars. All of the pickup dates are listed in there, so use it as your Bible for garbage collection and review that. And then finally, the Dropbox for election early voting is that the proper terminology?
Vote by mail.
Vote by mail is now open. We also have installed a new camera as required to monitor that box. So that's up and running, and we'll be able to have that footage on command. And that concludes my
Thank you.
reports.
Engineer report? Good evening, Lou. How are you?
Good evening, I'm fine. You, Mayor?
I'm good, thanks. Any report tonight?
Yeah, just one update on the water system improvement project. We're basically working with the contractor to get the contracts in order. He's going to be submitting bonds and insurance to our office. Once those contracts are in order, we'll schedule a pre-construction meeting and get the construction underway.
Great, great.
That ends my report, Madam Mayor.
It looks like we have a question.
Yeah, Lou, what's the time frame on, how long does that usually take?
I would say probably 3 weeks or so.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not bad.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Hopefully sooner.
Thank you. Attorney, Mr. Vignola?
No report tonight.
Okay, back to me. So I want to welcome one of Milltown's newest residents. Her name is Elizabeth Jean Peretti. So that is why Councilman Peretti isn't here. He is a new dad. Ellie and Mom and James are all doing well, and we wish them lots of happiness and all the best. So that's a good news to start off tonight. I also wanted to remind everyone that we are looking for poll workers for the primary election. If you would like to, Mimi, how do they apply to be a poll worker?
Actually, we're getting down to the point where if they were new, they'd have to go to training, so they should probably just try to contact me directly.
Okay,
as
so
soon as
if you're
possible,
interested on June 10th?
No, June 6th.
6th, sorry.
Is the
June
election.
6th, to be a poll worker, come see the clerk and she'll direct you on how you can get training and things, get all set up. We have a lot, it's spring, nice weather is coming, we have a lot of events coming up in Milltown. As Councilman Potter said, we'll all be at the 4th of July Celebrity Bartender this Saturday. On Saturday, May 6th, it's the Gloria Bradford Memorial Day at Gloria Bradford Park. There are flyers that are around. We'll share that here at Borough Hall. I believe they're at the Senior Center and around town. I think that starts at 11. Then on the 20th is Ariella Hopkins Day. And then on the 13th of May, I just got this, that the Letter Carriers Food Drive is occurring. They do that every year. It's a really good way to help people. And all you have to do is put it in a bag and put it on your front porch, and your letter carriers will come around and grab the food. The other thing, when we were talking about the calendar, also on the website, you can find all about that, but I hope you're using the calendars because that has lots of good information. Well, I've gotten good feedback about it. And speaking about getting good feedback, I know we're all super excited that PSE&G is coming. You know, we had mentioned that when I called that meeting a few weeks ago, and they had said that they were going to do the paving. I know some of the roads, they're actually going to pave the whole road, and as I've stated before, they will bring that back to its original. So for concrete streets, eventually it will go back to concrete. So we're all happy that they're moving along. It might be a temporary inconvenience, but it shows that the long project is starting to come to an end. So we're looking forward to that. Oh, and the other thing, by the way, I noticed that the Goslings are walking around with their parents, so please be mindful. We have our goose crossing signs up, but now that the little ones are walking around, just be extra careful when you're going down Main Street here by the pond or up by Home Depot and Target. So I think that's all I have for now. So I'll go on to old business. Does any member of the council have any old business to bring before the council this evening?
Yes, two quick items that I wanted to reiterate now that we're moving into May. I brought this up once in the past, and I don't know what the next step the council wants to take on it, but possible renaming of Pitane Avenue. If that's something we want to pose to the public, or if it's something that this council is ready to take some action on and decide to rename, or if we're just going to let it hang in the Vichy French name of Pitane. So that's one, and the second is I wanted to get an update on the feelings. I know they're going to kick it back to the utility committee. I haven't heard anything about it, but on the concept of proposing a public question for the sale of the water or sewer system, to put it onto the ballot this year so that we can get some feedback from the residents and hopefully start a valid discussion on the pros and cons of doing so. Of course, again, a non-binding question, but at least this way we can get some feedback from the residents. And lastly, I have this one on here as well about opening up the ordinance for utility connection fees and the billing frequency so that we can, number one, make sure we grab as much as we can from any developers who are planning to come in here and utilize the system for which we have to pay for off-site improvements, as well as try and balance the equity with billing cycles so that one group is not disproportionately billed for their use of a 3-month cycle, including June, July, and August. So I'll put that out there to the folks for utility and for the rest of council, and if you guys want to talk about it now, let's.
Why don't we do them one at a time? So the first is Pitane Avenue. Anyone have any, as I said before, I think that that's been something that's been going on a long time, agree. So but my question is it a resolution? Is it just what do we have to do to move ahead with doing that? I mean, I know that we've looked at it, the HRC has been working on plans for it, but do we have to adopt a resolution? Do we have to, what's the process?
I think it may be an ordinance, but I can look into it if there's some desire to do it.
So then
Generally,
we'll leave
I
it up to the
don't
council
go,
then.
it's an unconventional task for a municipality, so it's not a garden variety, something that I have a ready answer to, but I can certainly look into it if there's an appetite for doing it.
I'm smiling because it gives you something to report on at the meetings, because I know you often say, man, I wish I had something to talk about.
I do,
This
and
would be-
if you guys want to task me with that, I'll happily look into
So
it for you.
do we want to just say yay or nay?
I think it's long overdue, and it should have been passed years ago. And it's a shame it hasn't.
Peter, I have a question. How much was this going to cost To change the
In
name.
what regard?
to change the name? Legal fees, all the stuff we have to do.
I couldn't begin to tell you until I get an idea of what it is we need to do. So,
Before we go ahead, I think we should find out what it's going to cost, because I heard it was going to be,
I support you looking into that.
Yeah, same here.
I support
Move ahead,
it.
Scott.
I'll try to, I don't know that it's anything that's going to be an excessive cost. It's not a big property, and I believe that the renaming of the street, I know that New Brunswick just did it with Commercial Avenue, renaming it to Paul Robeson Way. Certainly I can reach out to TK Shammy, who's the city attorney, and see what they did to do that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
1 out of 3.
All right, so then
Move on
the
to number
next,
2.
next one is the public question.
Yes.
Right, so the Utilities Committee, did you discuss it?
We haven't discussed it yet. We've had other things on our agenda, but it is up for discussion. We also wanted to pass the budget before we looked into those connection fees as well, Rich. So we are going to be looking at, we're going to be talking about that in a future meeting.
Rich, I think we have to do a water rate study to figure out how much it's gonna cost before we, you put the water rate study on the ballot, maybe would even be a better plan.
Is that?
Well, my thoughts are, let's tackle these one at a time. The first thing about the public question would be very simple. It's a non-binding. It's an opportunity for the public to realize there's a question out there, to start doing their own research, for this council to present some information, both pros and cons, to the public so they can make an educated decision. And then based on the sort of response, I mean, if it's an overwhelming support, then obviously we'll have some more work to do to further evaluate it and our best path moving forward. If it's a 50-50, it's a, do we want to pursue it? And obviously if it's a resounding absolutely no, Revelinsky's out of his mind, then clearly I'm out of my mind, and it's nothing that we search for further.
But it may make sense, just like John just mentioned, to provide some data and some points for the residents and not just let the residents figure that out.
Absolutely, but the point being that it's a resolution or a ordinance as we discussed, so I think Peter mentioned that it's, they have to be in before the end of June, is that accurate,
I
or?
believe we would start the ball rolling before June. It would be second reading sometime in July in order to get it onto the ballot. I think there may be leeway to go into the August meeting, but I need to check the exact dates.
Because I start to worry then
Looking
that
at our clerk, she's shaking her head no.
For the August meeting, we would miss the time frame to get it to the clerk
Okay.
of county.
so we have to have the ordinance adopted by July, which then only gives us
It's
the
the
one
date.
meeting in August, and then really 2 meetings in September to even discuss this at a council meeting and present any information and findings to the residents. So I think it behooves us that if there is an appetite to find out what the residents want to say about this, that we move sooner rather than later, because we start to run into those 1 meetings a month, and then, with early voting, you got people marking the ballot before the information's really out there.
So Councilman Collins, what did you mean by the water rate study?
We have to do like a study on what our rates are and the comparative rates that we could get, because there's a lot involved in this. There's also, Councilman Potter's been looking into the force main sewer, and then how's that gonna affect, our rates also. So it's a complicated issue, but we're gonna have to do a water rate study and see what we can get for a water rate better than New Brunswick, if we can get better than New Brunswick, and whether they have the capacity to give it to us. Because from what I gather, I was talking to somebody and they said they're not sure Middlesex Water would have to, if they would have to run a main from Highland Park to Milltown, and how much that's gonna cost, and they have to amortize, over the cost of the expense over our rates. So that would be included in the rates, the new rates.
Right. Well, these are all, again, sorts of things that we could evaluate once we say, whether or not we want to even consider this and how the public feels about it. Obviously, if we hit a brick wall about there's no one available, which I think, based on my discussions with some of the private utilities a few years ago, no one threw up a hesitation about having interest in purchasing the borough and discussing some of the benefits for us. So I think, this public question starts the process of, okay, now we know how the public feels, and if we have to spend a few dollars on a rate study or a few dollars on some other things to see it through or to evaluate further, then we know, but at least we're not just shooting from the hip.
Do you want to ask the council if they have an appetite to do a rate study and put a resolution on to spend money to do a rate study?
I think that goes in conjunction with some other things, but I don't think the rate study is something that's going to help us get to the determination of whether or not it's beneficial to evaluate outside opportunities for
But it might be a good idea to have the rate study.
I think we're gonna, if the council's interested, regardless, yes, it's a good idea, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Or I would say they're mutually exclusive, because I don't think one is gonna make the determination on the other. A rate study is gonna help us understand if our rates are good or not, based on all of our costs, and a rate study will help us understand what the others look like. I mean, a rate study is more than just comparing how much we pay per gallon. It's a lot more than that.
But it also would determine what the valuation is that we would be selling
Well, I
for.
think,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
So,
to an extent, but those are all things that really you get further into detail with
well,
once.
but I still don't understand, if you're asking the public whether they want to sell the utility, that's it, period? That's the question?
Based on some of the pros and cons that go along with that. Like, number one, some of the pros would be the fact that when these private utilities purchase systems, public systems, it eliminates the borough's burden of operating them. So all your testing fees, your replacement of lead line services, that all now is handled by a private entity, as well as the billing systems. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll take on all of your existing debt as well, and you can mandate that they have to do a certain amount of improvements over the first 4 or 5 years or 10 years and outlay significant amounts of capital. So these are the things that are like, hey, does it make sense? Or, is the borough going to make the investment? Because quite frankly, when I see our guys out there who are doing DPW work that have to stop and then switch over to handle a water main break for several hours, we're losing the resources that are allocated to other things.
But
So-
wouldn't you have to give the public some of that information to make an informed decision at the public ballot?
Yes, yeah. I think all of that has to come out. So
But
that's
the-
why we
but
should
the-
use the next
the
few months to
particulars-
discuss those things.
So the particulars, so you want to ask the council if they want to spend money to do a valuation and rate study?
No, that's not what I'm asking right now. What I'm asking now is whether or not the council has an appetite for asking the public if they're interested in exploring the idea of privatizing the water system
So,
and discussing some of the pros and cons. And then,
So-
based on those results, it's kind of like a survey during the election. Based on those results, we can determine whether or not it's worth doing a rate study. But if the council wants to do a rate study at this time, I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
but if I go into the voting booth and I say, do you want to sell the water or not? How would anybody know whether it's feasible or not?
Through some of the information that we provide.
On the ballot question?
Through, over the next several meetings, having people come in and discuss it.
Discuss what? The valuation?
How the sale of the water system occurs.
I mean-
Process, the pros and cons of doing so.
You got
So again, I would think that we would have to hire someone, right, who can do that information for us. Don't know what that would cost. I don't think any of us are against spending money to find out information. I'd rather spend, $2,000, $3,000 than to put something on a ballot question that'll say, hey, let's sell this, and then end up, paying more expensive rates down the road. But, who is that? Like, who do we go to? And
So
We've
if
talked
I
about
can
this.
just, if
Yeah.
I can just interject for a minute. So, I've been working with a group called Waterworth that we've partnered with. And the reason, that I've partnered with them is because they are assisting me in, taking all of the utility information, plotting it out, taking a look at the rates. We kind of talked about what the surplus was last year, what it is this year, taking a look at our debt service, our budgeting needs, and all of that to try to, and not to mention the increase in rates that, have been implemented this year from New Brunswick, to try to plot out what we would need to do to be sustainable. In speaking with them, I also was hoping that they could help us to provide a valuation on the utility, because you had been, advocating for potentially privatizing the utility. So what they had recommended is that they can't really put a valuation on it, but by us gathering all this information and basically plotting out what the future of the utility looks like as far as expenditures, that's the first step. And then they recommended the next step would be to basically get another, like an engineering firm or someone to come in to be able to look at our infrastructure, and then be able to take the piece that I'm already working on and add it with theirs to come up with a valuation. And so we're kind of already working towards that, nobody's authorized any other piece, but it's kind of like we're already like halfway there. So I'm not sure where the council wants to go with that, but the fact that I've been working with them on the rates, not necessarily, it's almost like a rate study, but for a different reason, right? It's for projecting out to what our future is going to be so that we can plot it out, everyone could see, so whether, what we need to do to be sustainable. But you can take that piece and then take it to the next,
Right. Well, and also compare what the options are, that what would, someone
well, if you have.
off the cuff be willing to pay
Well,
for the
if you
system, and
have
what does
the
that
sort
do
of-
for us and for the borough? I mean,
Sure.
Not operating those vehicles, not having the additional employees, not having the billing system, not worrying about water main breaks in the middle of the night.
So-
All those sorts of things that kind of coincide with it is not just our operating costs increase as time goes on, but also our reinvestment costs and everything
Right.
else.
So I'm not sure if a ballot question is really necessary. I think it's more about whether or not the council wants to, once we get to one juncture, then we can look to get, because it probably wouldn't hurt to get evaluation of the system, because it might not be as bad as you think, or it might be way worse than anyone thinks, but we have done a lot of improvements to the system at this point. So it might not be in our best interest to move forward, but only proper reporting would, proper analysis would
Put your
vet
plan.
that out for you. So
Put it-
I don't know that if putting it on the ballot is, I think what you probably might want to do is get all of the facts together, and then once you know what it's worth, what somebody might be willing to pay, what the rates would look like for the residents, how if they absorb our debt, how that all translates. And then you can, maybe might want to make that pitch to say, okay, do we want to sell it or not? Because now you have all the facts. But that's just me thinking out loud, rather than kind of go back and forth, but should we just put that blanket question on? We probably should just do all the fact gathering and then present that.
So what does our time frame look like if you're saying that the valuation is probably our next step in the process?
Yeah, well, we're still working on the one piece. So then I would, we would have to
That would-
formulate how we could.
Would that have to be up to the council?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whether to go,
So
to go
Is
out
that
for
something-
RFP to
and I
get
thought that's what
someone.
the utilities committee was gonna.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can
exactly.
discuss it further, but
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
I'm probably talking out of turn, so I apologize for
Yeah,
that.
no, that's all right,
but
so they,
we just kind of put a plan in.
yeah,
But
it was
I don't
my
think-
understanding that that's what you guys.
Yeah, but I don't think the
And-
deadline is to hit the deadline for the
I
ballot
don't,
question.
I'm not
It's
sure
to
that
do it
it's
right.
gonna, even
right.
if you made decisions, and I don't know how long it would
Yeah.
take for that, so I don't wanna make any promises of when it can or can't be done, but
There's a lot of information.
we're definitely, moving in the step of analysis of the fund.
Well,
period.
many of the
So,
towns
whatever
that,
means.
that have sold did so because they neglected their infrastructure for so long. I mean, we have now spent
Yeah.
the last 3
We're in a-
years
we're in a
getting
really good
grants to
position.
Yeah, 4 years,
improve
yeah.
that at no cost to the taxpayers or ratepayers. I mean, there are pros and cons. Councilman Revelinsky, I know you sent, I think it was Somerville and Bound Brook sold their sewer system. I looked up, I believe Edison and Bayonne. Edison actually did a petition to take back their water system because their rates went up so much, and part of it was because they had KKR, Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts were one of the backers of Suez who owned them, and, I don't know how people feel about greedy hedge fund managers running their water system.
Don't like them.
And then there are also, just quickly, and I'm sure you did this to come up with the pros and cons of privatization. Let me just find this really quick. So the pros are, and if you don't mind, I'll just,
No, by all
this
means.
is like a waterworks thing. Pros of water privatization: it creates more opportunities to build efficiencies into the system. Privatization can reduce political influences. It can lead to infrastructure investments, which we've done already. Increases the levels of competition in the water industry. It allows governments to raise revenues from the sale of assets. The list of cons of water privatization. Privatization almost always leads to rate increases. It can undermine the quality of water. Private companies are not accountable to the consumer. The act of privatization can foster corruption. It reduces the amount of local control over the water supply, and it sometimes can cost more than government financing. So that's, and leads to employment losses as well. Also, once privatization occurs, it is challenging to reverse. And then it has about exporting water. So, I mean, I'm happy to share that article. I Googled it, and there's a lot. I mean, so there's pros and cons with anything, of course.
I was gonna say, where was that one from? Was that
This is
Food and
from, I'll
Water
share
Watch,
the
or-
link. It is from, I just did a quick Google search while we were talking. It is, what's the website? connectusfund.org. But I'll share the link with everybody in an email.
Appreciate that.
Sure. So if the utility committee doesn't mind going ahead with the water rate things, and then I think,
Yeah,
report back at the next meeting.
yeah,
That
we're
would
gonna,
be
Jeanette, we'll set up a meeting
Yep.
and discuss the next steps, so,
Sure.
John.
I think what we've discussed as next steps are very important ones, but there's nothing that was said tonight that convinces me that a ballot question is the way to get valuable information from our residents, because they have an opportunity in a ballot question to say yes or no. And what I need to hear to make a decision myself, and I believe my colleagues need as well, is the yes because and no if, and the sentences that follow that. So I do not support a ballot question, and unless the Utilities Committee comes back to us with something compelling, I don't believe I would support one going forward.
Anything else from the utilities committee? You guys over here?
Wasn't there a third question?
Okay, what's the third one?
No, the third was just about, when we have, looking in the near future, that with the development or possible development over there at Acme with Ford Avenue, that, the off-site improvement costs, we're looking at, I think this is going back a few years, but it was roughly $2 million in off-site improvements just for Ford Avenue. Now, I can imagine what the development over there at Acme would cause with 93,000 gallons of sewage to be accounted for going under the turnpike to our pump station. Again, those off-site costs, the developer is only responsible for a small portion of that. So one of the ways that we can kind of earn some revenue back prior and help offset those costs would be through our connection fees. This really wouldn't be affecting existing customers because they're already connected to the system. This would be for, you need a meter because you built a home. You need a meter because you built a residential complex or a facility. The cost for doing so, and I'd have to look back at our ordinances now, but it's minor right now compared to what it probably should be, especially with the increased costs of the electronic meters that we're utilizing.
Yep.
And then the last portion of that was, possibly going to splitting up, especially now that we're moving towards the digital meters, splitting up those water billing cycles to a more equitable way, because right now you get a third of the town, and then a third of the town, and then that starts over again. And so what you have is a situation in which some residents are billed, and remember, this is on your total usage over a 3-month period. So if you're billed for June, July, and August in one shot, you're gonna hit your peak demand numbers a lot faster and more easily than someone who is billed for, even though they're billed in the same, or everyone's billed those months, but when your bill comes in as May, June, July, or July, August, September, it's gonna be different. You're not gonna hit those peaks as much as someone who is billed June, July, and August. So I think there's a lack of equity there that we need to look at. And, the time now, especially as we're starting to get out of the rainy season and into the drier months, and filling the pools, I think it's something that we need to look at.
Where do we stand with the digitals?
So we're in the very, very early stages. I think they only got a handful of sensors on there, so we're 3 years or more
That's what I was
before the
wondering.
town,
Okay.
and that's as long as we can get the inventory and things like that. To do what you're recommending also is going to require a complete rate structure change. You can't just go month to month, because remember, you have to support your budget. So that it's a little more complicated. I think that once the AMI meters are up and running, then I think that would probably, we also have staffing challenges with meter reading. So, there's a lot to unpack there, but it's a little bit more complicated than just changing let's go month to month, because you're gonna have to change the whole rate structure and everything to take care of that.
Well, and I don't think it's necessarily just going month to month, but maybe billing everyone for the same 3-month interval at the same time. I mean, we already go and do the entire
Didn't we already
town
talk about this
for
a few
electric
years ago?
meters.
And
We did, and
and
it's
the-
funny that now we're bringing up the AMI meters again, which we discussed 4
But
years
at least
ago.
now
So
we're getting them.
we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. So didn't we get some guidance from the Utilities Collections Office on that? And that was one of the roadblocks to it?
I thought what was
No.
discussed was going monthly, right? So that was gonna be challenging, but even if you're changing you're still doing the entire town. So it would go back, you might as well be monthly, because then it would be this, everyone would get billed at the same time. So it would be, for those quarters, it would be 6,000 or 7,000 bills that would come through on top of taxes. So that is definitely where the utility department and the tax department had some challenges with processing all of that on the staff that's there, but,
So what's the proposed solution for making this fair and equitable?
I
Well,
don't.
do you want, who has the Collections Office? Do you want to touch base? Is that your department, Phil, or is that Utilities?
It's part of my department under administration, but as Jeanette already said, just to go cold turkey, to go like month to month is not, I don't think it's feasible. I don't think they'll be able to handle it personally.
Well, and I think no matter what you do, you still have to do an analysis, because if you're going to make everybody the same quarters, right? So basically, you're billing everybody at the same time, then goes back to looking at the rates. So even if we keep the same structure, so I don't know when that structure was, when was that rate structure put in place?
Couldn't tell you.
So it's always been that structure with the tiered?
Couldn't tell you.
Well, we've always had the tiers. It's always
Okay.
been, and we've had the 7,500 gallons for 3 months, so it just
Okay.
depends on, will I
So what
use
the
the
rates
minimum
are.
of
The tiers
7,500?
changed in 2017,
The tiers changed in
Well,
2017?
2018.
We adjusted the tiers slightly to accommodate for making up that 300,000 we needed in
Well,
the
well, that's,
6 months.
so that's my point, so that the tiers were implemented or changed or whatever, however it was done, because they were trying to keep the budget stable, right?
Well, we had to
So-
make up 300,000
Well, but you
shortfall
weren't
in
just
6
making
months.
up that shortfall, because that's the plug in the budget, right? So you need to make X amount of money to support the budget. And so the structure was put in place for that reason, which is all well and good. If you're going to change the quarters, if you're going to, then we have to take another look to see, okay, well, what do the rates need to be? Is the structure, the way that it is, gonna support it? Because you still have to you still need to generate the same amount of
Revenue.
fees. So that's all. So that's what would need to be done. We would, so it's not something that can be done, you can't just say, let's change the billing periods, because it's going to impact the revenues for the
Right,
budget.
but right now, the way it is, because it's a third of the town billed in one month,
Sure.
and then the next third and the next third, is that I might use the same amount of water as Madam Mayor throughout the course of the year, but
Right.
I'm paying more
No,
because I get that high usage in those summer months where her summer months are broken
Sure.
up.
So let me put it to you, like, I totally understand what you're saying. I get it. I know what you're saying. The problem is that the money that's generated over that, so that, I get what you're saying, so, but we still need to generate the same amount of rents. That's what we call it, like, utility rents. So which means that if we change the cycles so that people aren't, and, that one group isn't hitting, and it's not fair, you're right, for that one group to hit it, but then that you have to spread the money that needs to be collected over everyone else who isn't paying it. So it's going to involve a rate change, because you still need to generate the same amount of revenues. So
So
I'm not saying that it
This further
can't.
goes into the rate study, because it might be
Yes, I'm not,
divided
and that's what
by
I'm saying, that's what
3
it's gonna,
months.
that's what it's gonna involve. among other things that, whether we need to hire additional personnel and try to find meter readers, maybe we make that a full-time job instead of part-time. These are all things that, now that we passed the budget, that might be a little bit difficult to get through, but at the end of the day, that's the first piece that needs to be done. What would the rates look like? Do we need to change the structure? Do we need to change the tiers more? Because we need to collect the same amount of money. So it just shifts the pie. So I'm not arguing the fact, it's just that's what it's gonna take.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Oh, Mimi, well, I got you here. How much does an ordinance cost to put on a ballot? Was it, I think it was 5,700, wasn't it? It was probably older. No idea what the costs are?
No, I don't know that,
We
we just paid the printing of our ballot, so whether
Oh, you
the
don't
question's
know what
on
the
it or
word-
not, we're paying for the printing of the ballot anyway.
Maybe Peter could find out.
We could look back at the last time we did that, which was
Peter's
just a
getting
couple of
work.
years ago for the
I don't know if that's
marijuana.
Yeah.
a legal question, but
I was just wondering if we should put the Patain Avenue on the,
That's a good.
on the ballot,
on the ballot.
you certainly could.
Because I think the people need to have a choice,
No,
Any other old business?
That's my idea.
Hearing none, I will close old business and open new business. Does any member of the council have any new business to bring before us this evening? Yes? Yes, sir.
I'm gonna raise my hand.
Good.
I was waiting for anyone else to open their mouth. I know. I'm gonna
ahead.
keep you guys here all night because I missed the
That's
last
all right.
meeting. So dropping the kids off at school, this is probably more geared towards CME, but Peter, I'm your guy tonight. Right turns on Main Street, coming off of Washington, in the morning, what we see, and anyone who's dropped their kids off at Joyce Kilmer or had to fight in that traffic, sees that you get a line of traffic on Washington Avenue trying to turn right onto Main, while the left turn to Ford Avenue lane is wide open. The folks come from South Main, they block the intersection a little bit, and then as the cars creep out of Washington, you're stuck. You can't even pull out of JFK. And if you go up to one of the other side streets and pull out, well, you're just further in line in traffic. So I'm curious what we need to do, or what are the requirements for evaluating making a right turn onto Main Street from the middle lane on Washington Avenue. Can that be a Y? Because you really can't go straight unless you're going to the rescue squad or into the pond. So why not be able to go left or right? And if you go right, you gotta stay in that turn-only lane to Ford.
I think that's a question for your police department before you start.
I was going to
looking
say, I'll
into the
bring that
logistics
to the
of
Public
whether or
Safety
not
Committee.
How you facilitate it.
Well, we asked during the public safety meeting, I asked the chief, and he said, well, I see what you're saying, and I think because it's a county road, it might be all these other hurdles to jump through. So I figured I'd bring it to your attention and see if maybe you guys have dealt with this in other towns, or know what that looks like to deal with the county, if the council's got an appetite to pursue it, and if the chief, finds it a safe route for that during the mornings. And whether it's a timed thing where you can only do it between the hours of 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, or whatever it may be, but, how do we work with the county on that? Have you guys done any of those? I've seen them in other towns where you've got a double right turn.
That wasn't discussed at length at the public safety meeting, so we'll have to allow the committee to discuss that further, and we'll loop in the professionals as needed.
Is Washington's not a county road?
I don't even recall it
No, it's
coming
not.
up for discussion,
It's
to
just
be
Main
honest,
Street.
so.
Just Main Street.
But we'll make sure that it is on the next public safety agenda.
And if nobody else has anything, I've got one more thing, and I'll let everyone go home.
I'll say that that problem on JFK to Washington has been there since I dropped my kids off 15, 20 years ago.
And I don't know if anyone's ever, thought outside the box about how to improve it. I know we think of things all the time, and, now that I'm in it, I see it, and
But you're saying you go, but then you're stuck in the left turn lane now going over to Ford Avenue?
For example, I drop my child off either on Ford or on Clay. So I go up that way instead of waiting to go all the way up to West Church, make the left, and then go down, and then out Ford. So for me, going left on the Ford is easier. And actually, a couple of times, I've gone all the way out to Hardenberg Lane, and up Riva, and that was faster than going down Main Street.
What time?
Would that,
8:20?
Oh, no.
would that encourage
8 o'clock.
more people going on I don't know.
8 o'clock, 10
They
to
don't
10 to
let them in
people
the building for a while, so now you got
That-
kids standing
Then you
around
got
for 20
That's
people in
okay,
the
you hang
left
out,
turn
you hang
lane
out in
that
the
are-
front. I never did that. I always went around, made sure my kid was dropped off 10 to 8, a little after 8. 8:20, you're
also
killing
coming-
yourself.
But you're also coming from Van Loo at that time,
Oh,
making
it's-
it right.
Yeah,
It's
but
hard
the,
when you have one at
yeah.
Parkview and one at JK.
yeah, I had one at Parkview and
Right,
JK, it's, yeah,
I
8:20,
waited-
too late.
So we're throwing it out there, we're putting it on the wall, see if it sticks. See what we can do to help the residents,
Until you
right?
get the people that are in the left turn lane of Ford Avenue, and then they're trying to merge back over to go straight, right? So, you know, it's,
Shit, I got a shaking finger for them, I'll tell you that.
So Margaret, you're gonna bring this up with the
All right,
public.
what
so
else?
people-
The last item I got is, and this was brought up actually during Earth Day. It came to my attention that we might have an ordinance in town that prohibits vendors from setting up something of a garden stand on any public spaces. And there's a gentleman in town that is part of a gardening club and has actually started doing, he's got, I think, a quarter acre or half acre over at one of the local farms to grow produce. And he was wondering about how do we get a farmer's market in town. And, you know, when he mentioned it, it seemed like a really good idea. Maybe people will stop on their way home or on the weekends. But he brought up that we have a prohibition on it for public spaces, which made me kind of think back again to the food trucks and mobile vendors that we had. So, you know, does the council have an appetite to look into that? And if it's an existing prohibition and an ordinance, possibly open it up and make some exceptions?
to rescind all of the food stands ordinance?
Well, whether we make it a, you know, we limit it to 2 or certain weekdays,
Or
or
do
whatever it may
If
be.
you were
or-
interested, like other towns do it like every Thursday, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like once a week, they have, like, allow, you know, if you wanted to do so,
Can
I
we
don't
get
know
a
where
look
it
at
would
the
go or
ordinance
where,
before
you know, I don't know
deciding
where
on
it would
it?
set up. I'm sorry?
Can we get a look at the ordinance before deciding on all of it?
I can take a look and see what we have or don't have. I will admit that the garden stand ordinance aspect of our revised general ordinances is not something I'm fully
Yeah.
familiar with, so.
Yeah, it's probably.
Rich, you were just tasking me right and
Yeah.
left tonight. I mean, I want you to know.
You're welcome.
Oh, you're the best.
But, you know, it's funny, because we did bring this up in the past with the food trucks, and I was told by our code enforcement official at the time that we have an ordinance, and I don't believe, Peter, you were able to find that ordinance, or?
On public property.
Yeah, on public property, so, you know, again, if we're gonna try and promote some business and see some other opportunities for people that are stuck in traffic driving through Main Street. Hey, opportunities abound.
To cause,
Well,
to cause more traffic.
Garden stand in the middle of Washington Avenue.
But this way, when you're stuck in traffic, you can get out of your car and then buy something,
That's right.
right? So-
That's right.
Stand there.
Anybody else have any new business? John?
I just heard a compliment on the street sweeper, Rich, and the person said, I haven't seen the street sweeper in a long time, and I don't know, how long was it to get that part?
It came through today.
Quite some time, and it came through our neighborhood today.
Yeah, today.
So, I can't take the credit for that, I gotta give the credit where credit's due, and that, in a whole, goes to our DPW department there.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'll close new business and move on to audience comments. The public comment portion of our meeting is to allow the public to bring to the council's attention their concerns or comments. The council will respect the public's time by refraining any comment until the speaker has finished. It should be further noted that the public comment portion of our meeting is not structured as a question and answer session. If a member of the public has any questions they seek answers to, an appointment can be made with the appropriate office during regular business hours or whenever the council's time allows. Please state your name and address for the record when you come to the podium. Yes, sir. Good
Good
evening.
evening, Russ Einbinder, 152A North Main Street, that's in Milltown. And the reason I say that, because I've been living in Milltown a long time, been doing these meetings for a long time, which is why I'm here, just to help clarify something. You were talking before about Marshall Patain and the street named after him. Back in, I think it was around 2010, we had a gentleman from East Brunswick wrote a letter to Mayor Bradford. I don't know how many of you know this story, so I'm going to make sure you all do know it. I'm not going to make it long. I'm just going to let you know. And it wasn't thought of much, and he was kind of urging that we change it, that it not be, because of Marshall Pétain. In his latter life, he became pretty much the head of Vichy France, and, was seen shaking hands with Hitler and sending people to death camps, all kinds of bad things like that, even though he was a great hero during World War I. That's what the whole problem is and was. The thing that happened then, and the reason why I'm talking about it now, is that was in 2010. This is 2023. A lot of the things that we look at, the way we look at history and how we address them and how we remember them, have changed in our country and in our world. So the reason why it wasn't changed back then is another young man, by the way, by the name of Evan, he was 15, I think, or something like that, or 16 at the time, wrote another letter, came here. The New York Times was here, a couple of TV stations were here. In fact, if you look in New York Times, I think they have archives about this, what I'm talking about right now, okay? And basically, what happened was he came here, but he was from East Brunswick. He's not from Milltown.
Exactly.
So basically, some of the people I've lived here a long time goes, how dare somebody from another town tell us what to do with our streets?
Exactly.
And so there's a whole 4 homes that are on that tiny little street, okay? No disrespect to anybody living there, but the family there, or somebody that have a painting company, the mom, the grandma was, very upset that, that God forbid if she should call and have to have a 911 call, they wouldn't be able to get to the right house or something if she changed the street name or something. They couldn't find it in the old GPSs from 2010 or something stupid like that, right? Well, needless to say, what happened was the council here in this room decided totally, completely unanimously to reject it, specifically because they thought the needs of somebody that lived in town was more important than maybe upsetting the balance of things in the world. Like when I don't go on, and I'm not going to comment whether we should or shouldn't change monument names or take them down or up. That's not what I'm here to comment about. But that's what happened then. You guys need to decide and maybe do a little more research. That's why I'm giving the basics, if you don't already know, what we should do in today's society. Do we want to change it? Is it the benefit of the town? Do we want to forget the past? Do we want to look at it differently? Do we want to annotate it? We need to do that carefully, not just haphazardly say, oh, he was a Nazi sympathizer, get rid of it, or no, it's going to make somebody in our town uncomfortable if we do it. So you can't just do it that simply. You have to really look at all the things that could happen. And I can tell you somebody that's been involved with it in other places. I've helped out with our temple. Phil probably knows a little bit about that. We've looked into changes around the world that should and shouldn't happen. And this is something that probably should happen, in my personal opinion, but I'm not the one deciding. You guys are, and our town is. So what needs to be done is, you were asking, John, what does it cost? The lady involved then was talking about, oh, we got to do this with the mail stuff. I, for one, and I'm pretty sure I'll find some friends that'll help me, would be glad to help pay for any change of addresses or things like that. So that's not a problem. And most of the things that have to be done, most of those type of costs were personal costs, not really municipal costs too much. There's some record-keeping costs that have to be done. It's not an expensive proposition. It was looked into very thoroughly, actually, okay? It's not even, I don't even think it was $1,000 total, okay? And I know myself and other people would gladly pay that. So keep that in mind. I don't come up here talking about things like this too often, if you think about it in 25 years. I kind of obviously feel a little bit strongly about it, but I also want to make sure people totally understand that you can do good, you can do bad. It's how we remember you and why we should remember you is what counts here. And that's, we have to decide as a town.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And as I've mentioned here before, in March of 2020, we had on the agenda to have the honors 8th grade class come and do a presentation probably similar to what the person from East Brunswick did. They had a whole PowerPoint presentation ready to request the change of name. COVID came, the lockdown came, and we didn't have a live meeting, and they graduated. And so that's what happened. So it's certainly something that Milltown people have been looking into as well.
Can we reel them back in? Now that they're probably still in high school?
They're close to graduating from high school already. Anyone else have any audience comments? Yes.
Eric Poznanski, 31 Cleveland Avenue. I'm going to go a little different tonight. I'd like to thank the wonderful first responders in town. I'm going to start with the police. I'd like to thank our police department that continues to be steadfast, even in these times of great challenge. If you feel extremely safe in town, thank a police officer. Lawlessness in other areas of the country thankfully has not affected our small town, except for the catalytic converters. Bravery and compassion that can be seen in every officer on the Milltown Police Force. And I'm thankful that I can do this because actually, last year my wife was sick with COVID. She was extremely sick, and I had to call 911 twice. And the second time is the time I'm thinking about now was the two officers came, and they said because of restrictions they couldn't come into the house. And like I said, she was extremely sick. They said the only way they could come in is if I thought she was going to pass out. And my son was upstairs with my wife, and he asked her, and he said yes. They came right into action. They ran in the house, ran up the stairs with oxygen, and they helped her. It was an unfortunate situation, but with everything going on, they still had the bravery to come in the house. They didn't think twice about it. And there are two officers, I don't want to bring their names up because they probably don't want me to. And so I thank the police for this. And as I speak for my own family, I hope I speak for others also, because we all appreciate what they do. And it is a very safe town, and it's because of these guys on the force, because if we didn't have any of them, we'd be hiding in our homes. So I just appreciate that I can say this tonight.
Yep. Thank you.
So Gary, you gave me goosebumps saying that, really very moving, and if you'd like to tell me privately who the officers were, I can route that through the chief.
I could do that. I did thank them privately, and they just said, it's my job, and it's still more than their job, but I will.
Anyone else? Yes. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. George Murray, Fort Drive. So I had a couple questions. Sorry, won't be that long-winded. Mr. Vignolo, quick question. For the, and I don't remember which one it is by statute, either it's water, sewer, or electric, that you can't use that to balance the budget.
The water sewer is the one that isn't used anywhere other than the water sewer. I think the surplus from the electric is something that's used in the general fund, but I imagine our business administrator can confirm that a little more readily since she's in charge of those expenditures.
The utilities, you can, you know, they are an extension of the municipal government, so they can be, you can take money from either of those, if that's what your question is about,
The one
surplus
that's
or.
by statute, if it's water, sewer, it has to remain being used for water, sewer improvements only. It can't be used to balance the rest of the budget. And I was just curious as to see if that was happening or if it was used to balance the budget elsewhere.
No.
Okay. The phase one for West Foch, I know PSE&G is going in there to do their paving now, and you also had in your capital planning for phase one. Will they be replacing the utilities, the sewer lines or water lines underneath?
No. So PSE&G is gonna be doing a different part of West Foch that's not impacted by phase one. Phase one, Lou, perhaps you wanna explain where that area is?
Yeah, so there's a concern that if we pave the upper portion of West Foch, then when we do the lower portion, the contractor's going to beat it up. So we're going to start at the low end of the cul-de-sac, work our way out. The first grant from the state should get us up to about Albert, maybe a little farther. And so I think the borough's intention was not to use PSE&G's paving down on that section.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's what I was concerned with, because I know we did Tracy Drive, we paved that, and then there was a water main break, and that is still has cones around it and just bluestone shoved in a hole there, and that was a brand-new paved street. The parks, with the renovation of the parks, the pavilions there, how come the contractor didn't just identify the columns needed to be replaced before he replaced the roofs? Because my concern is, are they going to then just replace the columns, or are they gonna replace everything,
No, just
including
the
the new
columns,
roof?
just the columns are being replaced.
Okay. Your capital plan, you have from 21 to 23, but that's not really a long-range forecast. It's just basically current year spending for 23, because we're in 23. Typically, a capital plan is longer range, like 3 to 5 years out.
So the capital program that was presented tonight was for this year. The
Correct.
budget contains funding sources. We don't have all the projects outlined for the next, for a municipality of this size, state requirements is 3 years.
Okay. Yep.
So we have anticipated funding, but we don't have the individual projects.
Nothing's earmarked.
No.
Okay.
No, we have an anticipated costs, but that's what's required.
Okay. And my last question is, for the South Main Street Firehouse, the bricks, the wall of bricks there, is that going to get relocated as well with the monument, or was there any plans for that?
I was not aware.
So-
I'll double check that for you, George, and I can get back to you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, because I see that's still there, and I didn't know if there was any plans to relocate that or not. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Lee Weisenberger, 99 JFK Drive. I'd like to update a little bit on the pond, if I can. I want to thank Mr. Vanola for getting a copy of the title search from 2013 from Mr. Curley. There's questions to this title search yet. Ford Avenue, like I said, when this was done, it was supposed to be for the dam and the pond, I believe. The only thing that came out of this was the pond. There's questions yet on the pond, but they referenced family members owning half of the pond, and Mr. Berger owning the other half. In this title search, they give you the names of the family members from a deed in 1965. When I got those names, I checked it out on the Middlesex records, land records. 1992, one of the family's members passed because they all owned, as tenants in common, 100% of the property. They redid it again at that time, and it moved forward. Now, a question that comes up here now, this title search was 2013. The title company only did it up to December 2003, which is kind of strange. But in 2004, and I checked it with our tax people today, SB Industrial bought it back from the family members for $2.79 million. So currently, SB owns part of the pond. But in essence, I would say he owns all of the pond. But this brings up another question now with Ford Avenue that we will pursue at their meetings and probably the planning board now, because they want to separate the pond from Ford Avenue. And my question to that then for everybody is, how do they do that? Because you're subdividing property here somehow, and I don't know how that works. And it's kind of strange that even Milltown in a sense, but doesn't really pertain to them. The property behind the rescue squad, going back a long time, like I said, Alsol owned all the way up to Lakewood Ave just about. And that property changed hands different ways and whatever, but it actually probably went to the center of the pond. Yet when you read the deeds, as soon as you got to the water, it stopped. And once again, how can you just go and cut it off without subdividing the property? Like I said, the legality to this, I don't understand. We need help. But like I said, I'm just bringing this out now. Like I said, we'll try and pursue it more and figure it out. But I do appreciate Mr. Curley for sending this. But the other part to this too is that they refer to the pond as the north and the south pieces of it. and the boundaries are all arbitrary. So I believe you're gonna have to go back farther in the deeds. They only go back to 45 again when Al Saul gets it. And I believe, like I said, 35 deed helps more because it has survey points. And you'd probably have to go back farther, but you have to get a survey to establish what's going on. Because even there's a DOT deed, two of them that I brought up. They reference one again, and even that is just, it doesn't explain much. So, like I said, we will proceed.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Lee, I got a question for you. Did anything reference the trestle?
Once again, if you go back to the 35 deeds from Michelin, when they give it to the Michelin Realty Company, there's some references to that. There's actually more references. I've been digging through a lot of stuff. Like I said, Algro Knitting Mills, all the companies that were in the plant. If you start going through a lot of deeds, you get little pieces on stuff. And it refers back again to the deals made with the railroad company to put in whatever. And I'm leaning toward the fact that Raritan River Railroad probably built the trestle just to get the business. But to confirm that yet is, a little sketchy yet. Like I said, you gotta look at a lot of different stuff. I do have a deed from the traction companies, because like I said, that property exchanged hands from Michelin to a bunch of traction companies, PSE&G, it was all kinds of traction companies. But they actually sold it back to Michelin in 1930, I believe. And so it's just back and forth and whatever, so.
So basically, Milltown doesn't own any of it?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
But the dam, like I said, I don't know why the dam is not brought into this, because, like I said, once again, owning the pond and not owning the dam makes no sense. Like I said, that goes back to Michelin, it's gotta be one or the other. So, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close audience comments and move on to council comments. Does any member of the council have any final comment?
Madam Mayor, just two quick ones. Again, thank you to Jeanette and to the Finance Committee for putting together the budget and the capital planning document that was approved tonight. And like to welcome the newest member of the Cable TV Committee, Ben Freed.
Oh, yes, welcome,
Looking
Ben.
forward to working with you.
Thank
Madam Mayor, I just have three quick things. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Environmental Commission and everything with a great, successful Earth Day this past Saturday. Also, too, I'd like to also congratulate Councilman Peretti and his wife on the birth of their child. And finally, just to piggyback on what Councilwoman O'Donnell said, so I did get my Milltown Rescue Squad in the mail.
Yep.
And I've already put it in the envelope, and you can just go right to the rescue squad, put it right in the side door. You don't have to mail it. I know they're gonna be coming around the month of May, but let's help them out and give it to them directly so they can save some time and,
Yep. Good idea.
take care of what they need to do.
Yep. Agree.
Taking care of all of us.
And that's got a QR code on it, too.
Fancy.
Yeah, we're getting,
On behalf of the rescue squad, I'm sure they say thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to congratulate Councilman Peretti in addition to his family, and I think all the council wishes him the best.
Yep, that's very nice. Anyone else? Okay, back to my final comments. I went to a lovely Eagle Scout project, so I would like to congratulate Jonathan Murray on becoming an Eagle Scout. It's a very proud day for a family and for Milltown when we have somebody that's helped our community that finishes his Eagle Scout project, so that was very nice. As we said, with the capital plan and with PSE&G, there will be a lot of road paving going on, and it's a good thing. We've heard the concerns of people for several years now that their streets have potholes, their streets have strips, their streets need paving. So I think I've heard the figure of something like 27th Street,
Like 30, I think 30 in
30-something
total with that.
streets will be done, which is really good, and then we'll continue it every year. And as we said, with the the capital plan, all of this that we're doing is really at no extra cost to the taxpayers, you know, so which is a great thing to see so many things that'll be getting done, the roads, the infrastructure, the parks, all of that stuff. So I commend all the folks of the full council, but especially the finance committee for putting such an effort into, you know, doing stuff and getting so much done for very little impact to the rate and taxpayers. So I thank you for that. And with that, I will close the mayor comments and ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
A motion by Councilman Collins, second by Councilman Potter. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all. Have a good evening.
She didn't ask for those opposed. I wanted to stick around a little bit longer and mark it up.